The shuttle moved through the darkness of space like a small fish swimming toward a whale. Inside sat a woman named Park. She wore the blue and silver uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Her black hair was tied back neatly. Her hands rested calm on her lap. She looked out the window at the massive station growing larger with each passing minute. The diplomatic station was a thing of terrible beauty. It hung in space like a crystal flower made of metal and glass. Lights glowed from 1,000 windows. Ships of all sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. The Empire had built it to show their power to the galaxy. Every species who came here was meant to feel small. Did not feel small, she felt ready. Her pilot, a young man named Shin, spoke through the intercom. "Ambassador, we will dock in 5 minutes. They have cleared us for Bay 7. "Thank you," replied. Her voice was soft but steady. "Remember your orders. Once I leave the shuttle, you stay inside. Do not come out for any reason." "Yes, Ambassador." There was worry in his voice. "Are you sure about this, going in alone?" Smiled, though he could not see it. "I am sure. Earth chose me for this mission. I will not fail." The shuttle slowed as it approached the docking bay. Great metal doors opened like the mouth of some giant beast. Inside could see soldiers waiting. They stood in perfect lines, their tall bodies covered in black armor. They were frightening creatures. They stood over 2 meters tall. Their skin was dark like polished stone. Their eyes burned with orange light. They had conquered 40 star systems and destroyed anyone who stood against them. And now they had invited humanity to talk peace. The shuttle landed with a gentle bump, stood up and straightened her uniform. She picked up a small data tablet that contained Earth's peace offer. Then she walked to the door. The air that rushed in was cold and smelled strange, like metal and something bitter. Stepped out onto the deck. The soldiers watched her with those burning eyes. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They just watched this small human woman walk between their ranks like she belonged there. At the end of the line stood a larger than the others. His armor was decorated with gold symbols. His eyes burned brighter than any of the soldiers. This was High Commander, the master of this station, and one of the most powerful leaders in the Empire. Stopped before him and bowed her head slightly. It was a gesture of respect, not submission. "High Commander, I am Ambassador Park of the Earth Coalition. I bring greetings from my people and an offer of friendship between our species." Looked down at her. His face showed no expression, but his eyes moved over her like she was something strange and small. "You come alone," he said. His voice was deep and rough. A small device on his collar turned his words into sounds could understand. "One small human, no guards, no weapons. Your people are either very brave or very stupid." "We are hopeful," replied. "Earth wants peace. We have heard of the Empire's greatness. We believe our two peoples can help each other." "Help each other," made a sound that might have been a laugh. "What help can humans give to the? You are young, weak. You have only traveled among the stars for 200 years. We have ruled our empire for 3,000. "Young does not mean useless," said calmly. "And we did not come to compare ages. We came to talk about the future." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and began walking toward the station's interior. "Come, human, we will talk, but I warn you, do not make deals with those who have nothing to offer." Followed him. Her footsteps echoed in the great hallway. Around her, the station hummed with life and power. She saw workers and soldiers moving about their duties. None of them paid attention to the small human walking among them. She was beneath their notice. That was fine with, let them ignore her, let them think she was nothing. What none of them knew, what even herself did not know, was what had happened on Earth 12 hours before her shuttle departed. In a secret room deep beneath the Coalition headquarters, Earth's Emergency Council had gathered. 7 men and women who held the fate of humanity in their hands. They had listened as intelligence officers presented their findings. The invitation was a trap. Intercepted communications made it clear. The plan to take Earth's diplomat hostage and use her to force humanity's surrender. Admiral had stood before the council with fire in his eyes. "They think we are children," he had said. "They think we will come begging for peace and they can chain us without a fight. I say we show them what happens when you try to chain humanity." The council had voted, 7 hands raised, 7 voices saying yes. The declaration of war was signed in that secret room. No announcement was made. No warning was sent. The galaxy would not know until it was too late. And so, as walked through the station with hope in her heart, 47 human warships were already moving into position in the outer system. They flew dark and silent, hiding behind moons and asteroids. Their weapons were ready. Their crews were waiting. The trap was set, but not for humanity. For the Empire, judgment was coming, and they had no idea it was already on its way. 3 days passed on the station. 3 days of meetings and talks and carefully chosen words, sat in rooms made of crystal and metal. She spoke with officials who looked at her like she was an insect. She smiled and nodded and presented Earth's offers of trade and friendship. They listened. They asked questions. They made promises that sounded good but meant nothing. Noticed how they never said yes to anything real. They never agreed to any deal. They just kept talking, kept asking her to wait, kept saying tomorrow would bring answers. On the morning of the 4th day, a guard came to her quarters. "Ambassador Park," he said through his translator, "High Commander wishes to see you. The final agreement is ready to be signed." Felt her heart lift with hope. Maybe she had been wrong to worry. Maybe they really did want peace. She dressed in her finest uniform and followed the guard through the winding corridors of the station. But something felt wrong. The guard was not taking her toward the meeting rooms where they had talked before. They were going deeper into the station, down corridors that grew darker and colder. The walls here were plain metal, not the beautiful crystal of the upper levels. "Where are we going?" asked. The guard did not answer. He just kept walking. They stopped before a heavy door. The guard pressed his hand against a panel and the door slid open. Beyond it was a small room with metal walls and a single bench. There were no windows, no decorations, nothing but cold, empty space. "Step inside," the guard said. Understood then, she understood everything, but she did not run. She did not scream. She walked into the cell with her head held high. The door closed behind her with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. She sat down on the bench. The metal was cold through her uniform. She waited. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a screen on the wall flickered to life. High Commander's face appeared, his orange eyes bright with victory. "Ambassador Park," he said, "I hope you are comfortable." "I have been more comfortable," replied calmly, "but I have also been less comfortable. What is the meaning of this, Commander?" Showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "The meaning is simple, human. You are now a prisoner of the Empire. Your people will receive our demands within the hour. They will surrender their military forces, their ships, their colonies. In exchange, we will return you to them, eventually. And if they refuse, then you will die, slowly, and we will broadcast your death to every human world. They will see what happens to those who defy us. They will surrender or they will be destroyed." Looked at the screen. Her face showed no fear. "You are making a mistake, Commander." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. Every species says this. The proud warriors of Prime said this. The wise scholars of the said this. They are all slaves now. Their words meant nothing. Your words mean nothing. "My words might not," said quietly, "but humanity's actions will." Waved a clawed hand. "Enough talk. Enjoy your cell, Ambassador. You will be here for a very long time." The screen went dark. Sat alone in the silence. She thought about Earth. She thought about her family, her mother in Seoul, her brother who worked on the Mars colony. She thought about the millions of humans who were counting on her to bring peace. She had failed them. The thought hurt worse than any physical pain. But far away, In the cold darkness of the outer system, something was happening that knew nothing about. When her shuttle had docked at the station 3 days ago, a tiny device hidden deep in its hull had activated. It was smaller than a grain of rice. The sensors had never detected it. The device had sent out a single burst of coded signal, so quick that it looked like nothing more than random space noise. That signal had traveled outward at the speed of light. It had reached a dead moon at the edge of the system. And there, hidden in the moon's shadow, Admiral had received it. The Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unyielding Dawn. Around him, his crew worked in silence. They had been waiting for 3 days. 3 days of cold food and recycled air. 3 days of running their engines at minimum power to avoid detection. 3 days of patience. Read the decoded message on his screen. It was short, just 2 words, trap confirmed. He closed his eyes for a moment. Part of him had hoped that would prove humanity wrong. Part of him had wanted peace to be real. But hope did not win wars. Preparation did. He opened his eyes and looked at his officers. Lieutenant sat at the communications station, her fingers ready on the controls. Commander No stood at the weapons console, his jaw tight with controlled anger. They were all waiting for his word. "Signal all ships," said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent bridge. "Warm up the reactors, charge all weapons. We move in 6 hours." His fingers flew across her console. Across the outer system, 47 ships began to wake from their slumber. Engines that had been cold for days started to glow with power. Weapons that had been silent began to hum with deadly energy. The Empire thought they had trapped a helpless diplomat. They thought humanity would beg for mercy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In her cell, sat and waited. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that her capture had triggered something far greater than the could imagine. She only knew that she was alone, and that Earth seemed very far away. But Earth was closer than she thought, and it was coming with fire. The first sign of trouble came at midnight, station time. An officer sat at his sensor console, bored and tired. His shift would end in 2 hours. He was thinking about sleep when something strange appeared on his screen. One of the outer defense platforms had stopped responding. He tried to contact it. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Before he could report this, a second platform went dark. Then a third. "Commander," he shouted into his communicator, "we have a problem." High Commander was in his quarters when the alarm reached him. He had been celebrating his easy victory over the humans. Now he ran to the command center, his heavy feet shaking the floor with each step. "Report," he demanded as he entered the room. "Sir, we have lost contact with 12 outer defense platforms," an officer said. His voice was shaking. "We do not know why, they just stopped." "Equipment failure." "All 12 at once, that is not possible." Felt something cold grow in his stomach. Something was wrong, very wrong. Far from the station, in the shadow of an asteroid belt, a small ship moved without making a sound. It was painted black and gray, almost invisible against the darkness of space. This was the Silent Thunder, a human stealth destroyer, and on its bridge stood Sub-Commander. She was young for her rank, only 28 years old, but she had trained for this mission her whole life. Her ship and crew had spent 2 years learning to move without being seen. Now that training was being put to the test. "All platforms eliminated," her tactical officer reported. "They do not know we are here." Nodded. "Good. Signal the Admiral. Phase 1 is complete." Across the system, hidden ships received the message. Admiral smiled grimly when he read it. The outer defenses were gone. The path was clear. "All ships," he commanded, "begin approach. Stay dark until we reach weapons range." 47 warships began to move. They came from behind moons and asteroids. They rose from the darkness like ghosts. Their engines ran at minimum power. Their hulls were painted to absorb sensor signals. The detection systems, designed to find the loud, proud ships of other species, saw nothing. On the station was growing more worried by the minute. His officers could not explain what had happened to the platforms. They could not find any enemy ships. They could not find anything at all. Scan the entire system, ordered. Use maximum power, find whoever did this. The sensors swept outward. They found nothing except. Commander, an officer screamed. Contacts, multiple contacts appearing on sensors. Spun to look at the main display. What he saw made his orange eyes go wide with shock. Human ships, dozens of them. They were everywhere. They had somehow gotten within weapons range without being detected, and they were not the small, weak vessels they had expected. These were warships, real warships with weapons that glowed hot and ready. "That is impossible," whispered. "How did they?" His question was interrupted by a voice that filled every speaker on the station. It was calm and cold, like the voice of death itself. "This is Admiral of the Earth Coalition Fleet." On the flagship's bridge stood tall before the main screen. His face showed no anger, no hatred, only terrible determination. "You have taken our diplomat hostage," he continued. "You have threatened our world. By the authority of the Emergency Council of Earth, humanity has declared war on the Empire. You have one chance to release Ambassador Park unharmed and surrender your station." He paused. His eyes seemed to look directly at, though they were separated by thousands of kilometers. "This offer expires in 10 minutes. I suggest you take it." The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Every officer stared at their commander, waiting for orders. Claws dug into the metal railing before him. His mind raced. Surrender? The Empire had never surrendered, not once in 3,000 years. The shame would be unbearable. His people would rather die than bow to these young, arrogant humans. "All ships attack formation," commanded. His voice was rough with fury. "Launch all fighters, destroy the human fleet, show them what it means to challenge the." The fleet moved to obey. 30 warships broke from their positions around the station. Hundreds of fighters poured from their launch bays. They may have been surprised, but they were still mighty. They had crushed dozens of species. They would crush this one too. But as the ships moved forward, Admiral smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter watching his prey walk into a trap. "They chose war," he said quietly. "So be it." He turned to his weapons officer. "Commander, no, you may fire when ready." No's finger pressed the button, and the darkness of space erupted into light and fire. The battle for humanity had begun. They had never seen anything like it. Human ships moved through space like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. They did not fight like the other species they had conquered. Those species had been brave but clumsy. They had charged forward and died in waves. The humans were different. The humans were terrifying. Captain stood on the bridge of the destroyer Iron Will. His ship was old and small, one of the first Earth had built for deep space combat. It was not meant to survive a battle like this, but had not come here to survive. He had come here to win. "Helm, take us into the center of their formation," he ordered. His pilot, a woman named, looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, that is suicide. They will tear us apart." "Trust me," said with a small smile. "Just get us there." The Iron Will accelerated forward. It dove straight into the heart of the fleet like a spear thrown into a nest of snakes. Ships turned to face this mad attacker. Weapons fire filled the space around the small destroyer. Shields flared and failed. Hull plates melted and broke away. But the Iron Will kept coming. On the flagship watched with growing confusion. "What are they doing? One ship cannot defeat us." He was right. One ship could not defeat the fleet, but that was not the plan. At the last moment, before the Iron Will was destroyed, escape pods launched from its hull. They scattered in all directions, too small and fast for the weapons to track. Inside those pods were and his crew, racing toward the safety of the asteroid field where human rescue ships waited. And the, focused entirely on the Iron Will, did not see the three cruisers that had emerged from behind a nearby asteroid. The cruisers opened fire. Their weapons cut through the formation like hot knives through soft meat. Ship after ship exploded in balls of orange flame. They tried to turn and fight, but they were caught off guard. By the time they organized a response, a dozen of their ships were already gone. It was a trick, realized. The small ship was a distraction. But understanding came too late. The battle was already turning against him. In the chaos of combat, a squadron of human fighters weaved between the giant warships. At their head flew Lieutenant Commander O'Mara. Her was Ghost, and she had earned it 100 times over. Her fighter was small and fast, almost impossible to hit. She had already destroyed 3 ships, and she was not done yet. "Ghost Squadron, follow me," she commanded through her radio. "We are going for the big one." The big one was the command ship, a massive vessel twice the size of anything else in the battle. Its weapons could destroy a human cruiser in a single shot. Its shields could withstand almost anything. Almost. Myra had studied the ship designs for months. She knew their weakness. The shield generators were located at the back of the ship, protected by heavy armor. But there was a small gap where the engine exhaust vents needed to release heat. A gap just big enough for a fighter to fly through. "This is crazy," one of her pilots said. "Yes," Myra agreed, "but it will work. Stay close and follow my lead." Her fighter dove toward the command ship. Weapons tried to track her, but she was too fast, too unpredictable. She twisted and spun through the fire, her hands steady on the controls. Behind her, her squadron followed, trusting her with their lives. They reached the back of the command ship. The engine vents glowed with terrible heat. Myra found the gap, a dark shadow between 2 massive exhaust ports. She flew through it without slowing down. Inside the gap, she fired everything she had. Missiles and energy beams slammed into the shield generator. The machine exploded in a shower of sparks and flame. Myra pulled up hard, barely escaping before the explosion consumed her. Behind her, the command ship's shields flickered and died. "All ships," Admiral announced. "The enemy command ship is vulnerable. Concentrate fire." A dozen human ships turned their weapons on the helpless giant. It tried to run, but it was too slow. Beam after beam struck its hull. Explosions tore through its decks. Finally, with a great shudder, the command ship broke apart and died. The remaining ships saw their command vessel destroyed. They saw how easily the humans had tricked them, outmaneuvered them, beaten them. Fear replaced pride. Survival replaced honor. They began to run. Some escaped, most did not. The human fleet hunted them through the system, relentless and precise. By the time the battle ended, the fleet had lost 22 ships. The humans had lost 3. But the station remained, and inside it, Ambassador Park still waited in her cell. On the station's lower levels, a door exploded inward. Through the smoke and fire stepped figures in black armor. Human Marines, the finest soldiers Earth had ever produced. They moved through the corridors with terrible speed, clearing room after room of defenders. Sergeant led the team assigned to find the ambassador. She was young, only 24, but she had trained harder than anyone in her unit. She kicked down door after door, searching for the woman who had come in peace and been answered with chains. Finally, she found the right cell. One shot from her weapon destroyed the lock. The door slid open. Inside, looked up. She saw the armored figure in the doorway. She saw the Earth flag on the shoulder. "Ambassador Park," asked, lifting her visor. "I am Sergeant Earth Marines. We are getting you out of here." Stood slowly. Her legs were stiff from sitting on the cold metal bench, but her eyes were bright with wonder. "How many ships did we bring?" she asked. Smiled behind her helmet. "All of them, ma'am, every single one." for the first time in 4 days, smiled too. The battle was over. The station floated in space, dark and broken. Its weapons were silent. Its shields were gone. Human ships surrounded it like wolves around wounded prey. High Commander stood in the ruins of his command center. Broken screens sparked and flickered around him. Dead officers lay where they had fallen. The smell of smoke and burnt metal filled the air. He was alive, but his pride was destroyed. Everything he had believed about his people, about their power, about their place in the galaxy, all of it had been proven wrong in a single night. A screen on the wall crackled to life. Admiral's face appeared. The human looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his uniform was wrinkled from days of waiting and hours of battle. But he did not look happy. He did not celebrate. His expression held something had never seen in the eyes of a conqueror. Sadness. Commander said quietly, "Your fleet is destroyed, your station is crippled, you have lost." His claws scraped against a broken console. "You tricked us," he growled. "You knew we would take your diplomat, you planned this from the beginning." "We suspected," agreed. "We hoped we were wrong, we prepared in case we were right." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes meeting through the screen. "But understand this, Commander, we did not want this. Humanity did not travel 300 light years to make war. We came hopping to find friends. We came with open hands. You came with hidden weapons. Because your people have a history of taking what you want through force. Because every species who trusted you ended up as slaves." Shook his head slowly. "We wanted peace. We still want peace, but we will not buy it with chains." The screen flickered and a second figure appeared beside. It was Ambassador Park. Her uniform was dirty now, stained from her days in the cell and her escape through the battle-torn station. But she stood straight and proud, her eyes clear and strong. Looked at the small human woman he had thought to use as a hostage. He remembered how she had walked through his soldiers without fear. He remembered how she had looked at him and said he was making a mistake. He had laughed at her then. He was not laughing now. "We came with open hands," said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You answered with chains. Remember that, Commander. When you tell your empire what happened here, remember that we wanted peace. We asked for nothing but friendship, and you chose to betray us." "What will you do now?" asked. His voice was rough and broken. "Destroy us, take our worlds as we took others." And looked at each other. Something passed between them, a silent understanding that could not read, then turned back to the screen. "No," he said. "We will not become what we fought against. The Earth Coalition will not take your worlds. We will not enslave your people." "Then what do you want?" Answered, "We want you to release every species you have conquered. All of them, set them free. Let them choose their own future." Stared at her. "You ask us to destroy our own empire. We ask you to stop being conquerors. We ask you to become neighbors instead of masters." Tilted her head slightly. "It will be hard. It will take time, but it is possible. We know it is possible because humanity has done it ourselves. We were once conquerors too. We learned better ways. And if we refuse?" Admiral's expression grew hard. "Then we will return. Not with 47 ships, but with 400. Not to free your slaves, but to end your ability to make war. We do not want to do this, but we will if we must." The screen went dark. Stood alone in the ruined command center. Around him, the station groaned and creaked as its damaged systems struggled to stay alive. He thought about what the humans had said. He thought about his empire, built on conquest and blood. He thought about the species they had crushed, the worlds they had taken, the countless lives they had destroyed. And he thought about the small human woman who had walked into his station alone, offering friendship, and how his people had answered her with betrayal. For the first time in his long life, felt something like shame. In the weeks that followed, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. Every species with access to communication networks heard the story. The mighty had been defeated. Not by a larger empire, not by more powerful weapons, but by a young species who had prepared for treachery while hoping for peace. The slave species of the empire heard the news too, and they began to hope. On a dozen worlds, rebellion started. They who had been warriors before the conquered them remembered how to fight. They who had been scholars used their knowledge to sabotage systems. Other species, long beaten down and forgotten, rose up and demanded their freedom. The empire did not fall in a day. It crumbled slowly like a mountain worn down by water. Some commanders chose to fight to the death. Others, chose to accept the new reality. They released their slaves, their fleets. They began the long, painful process of learning to live without conquest. Earth watched all of this happen. They did not gloat. They did not take advantage. When former slave species asked for help, humanity gave it freely. When they asked for trade agreements, humanity negotiated fairly. They proved through action and deed that they meant what they had said. Humanity wanted friends, not servants, peace, not power. Ambassador Park returned to Earth as a hero, but she did not feel like one. She had gone hopping to prevent war and had found herself at the center of the biggest battle in human history. That was not success, she thought. That was survival. A year later, she stood before the Earth Coalition Council. They were discussing a new diplomatic mission, this time to a peaceful species who had heard about humanity and wanted to meet them. Ambassador Park, the council leader said, "We would like you to lead this mission, if you are willing." Thought about the station. She thought about the cold cell and the endless waiting. She thought about the fire and fear and the Marines who had come to save her. She thought about Admiral's tired eyes and his quiet sadness at having to fight a war he never wanted. "I am willing," she said, "but I have one condition." "Name it." "This time we send ships, not to hide and wait for betrayal, but to fly openly beside me. I want the galaxy to see what humanity really is. We come in peace, but we are not weak. We extend our hands in friendship, but we are not afraid to fight." She paused, remembering the faces of her rescuers, the bravery of the pilots, the determination of the Marines. "We are humanity," she said, "and the galaxy should know that we protect our own." The council voted yes. And somewhere in the stars, among species who had once been slaves and were now free, a story was told. A story about the humans who came offering peace and found war, who fought not for conquest but for justice, who won not with cruelty but with courage. The story spread from world to world, growing with each telling, and it always ended the same way. Do not mistake humanity's kindness for weakness. Do not threaten what they love, because if you do, they will come for you, not with hatred, not with madness, but with cold, careful preparation and absolute determination. They will come, and you will never see them coming. And by the time you understand your mistake, it will already be too late.